Hi, I'm Martin Jarvis, and once again, I want to welcome you to Listen. We still have a long way to go, we know that. 2012, African American president. One of the things that I'm really happy about is my daughter. She's 6.5 years old. And in her mind, all she's really ever known what a president is African American. And so she recognizes, because she's in school and history and all, and they go through the presidents, she recognizes there have been white presidents. But the only president she's ever known has been an African American. And I appreciate that for all black kids and kids of color, but as well as white kids to know this, because there's no doubt, historically, as they study, there have been white presidents. But in their minds, all that they've known, if they're my daughter's age, is an African American president. And what's good about that, for me, is that anything is possible. That they have the white kids and the black kids and the others, the children of color, all the children in this nation. What we came up with, whether we were white or black or other, is that it was never a possibility that there could be an African American president. It's just something beyond us, and it's not like that with our children today. They don't have that. I was driving with my daughter. I was taking her to just driving her last night. We're coming from karate practice, and I was telling her that, it was amazing to me, some of the changes. I was telling her that one day when she's older, when she's like 30 or 40 years old, she's going to be experiencing things that are unimaginable to her right now. And I was telling her, when they had told us when I was her age about cell phones or about cable vision, or about any of the things that the internet, computers, all this stuff that we take for granted. It was unbelievable. And to me, that's the only real negative thing about it. I don't mind getting older, and I know that eventually I will not be here. But to me, I don't mind that, because that's just the natural thing in life, you're here and you're not. But what I do mind is I'm going to miss things, the technological advances that are unimaginable to me right now. She's in for and she could be telling her kids this one day as well. And so I like this about the African American president, that it's something that no generation after this president or since this president will ever have with them as far as a limitation to an African American. It doesn't even matter if he doesn't become president again, or if he just does one more term and there's no other African American president for 100 years. Still, the reality is that is no longer an impossibility. And to me, that's a blessing. But we do still have a long way to go. And I think the way that we have to go, it's about nothing more than our mindsets, than the way that we see things. I was telling someone about, I was with folks that were more educated than me, and I was telling them about the rationalizing process, as I've mentioned so many times on this program. And I was corrected by, I think, a couple of folks with a bachelor's degree and one with a master's degree, that I'm talking about worldview, But sometimes we let these things go to our heads, But I don't even know if it's really worldview. I'll have to look it up, because I see that worldview, even the concept of worldview, would still be limiting, What I see as a rationalizing process, a result of every moment of every experience that we have is contributing, is contributing. I don't want to say contributing to our rationalizing process. It's actually creating our rationalizing process. And so if a worldview evolves every second of an individual's life, then yes, a worldview, but I consider a rationalizing process as it's alive in our minds. It's alive, as alive as we are. And so what I'm saying is some of those things need to be affected. And so that part of our worldview, or our rationalizing process when Obama became president, was permanently affected, permanently changed, and I think for the better, for many folks. But for many folks, it was a tragedy, because if you look at the fervor, and I'm trying to be understanding now, because you know how we are. We get ticked when you're talking about Obama, you know, because we see differently what some of them see, what some of they see, you know. But to recognize if it's not a positive adjustment to your worldview, it might be somewhat traumatic to deal with. Okay. Like you might find your hero, and you know, you might have a hero. We see too many movies like that, you know, and then all of a sudden the individual sees the hero in a frail or fragile or a failing moment, and then their world collapses because their worldview was challenged traumatically for a negative. Now, if you see somebody that you have a very low opinion of, and pitiful and pathetic, and all of a sudden they do something wonderful, grand and great, you know, and humanitarian-like, then the worldview adjusts, but it's not so traumatically terrible because it's in a positive way. Okay? So that's when you find African Americans, even with the process of Obama becoming president, it was an adjustment to the worldview, the reality, but it was a positive adjustment. Even remember Jesse Jackson crying, and how many, I don't believe there are too many African Americans who didn't have tears in their eyes, whether they were Republicans or Democrats, because it was a positive thing. It was a positive contradiction to the worldview for an African American that in a positive way. But then you find, if you notice the fervor and the hate and the fury of so many Caucasians when Obama began, no, he wasn't born here, he's not a Christian, he's a terrorist, blah, 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 a Muslim and all this stuff, because it was a traumatic contradiction to their particular worldview. And it was not easy to deal with. And so even today, some folks still don't even know he's a Muslim, no, he's this, no, he's that. As ridiculous as that is, because they can't embrace, they can't accept this traumatic contradiction to their worldview. And sort of because they sort of built themselves into the worldview. And so it was a contradiction to their place in the hierarchy in their worldview. So man, this is what we talked the last program about, that we are the result of the total of all of our experiences, because we don't forget anything, and it adjusts us. We're constantly being adjusted every second, every moment of our lives. Sometimes, and to me, it's always for the good, even if it's a terrible, traumatic contradiction, if it's a truth, even if it hurts. It's sort of like taking a shot, you know, or medicine that tastes bad. But if it's going to make you well, it's not a bad thing. We have to stop complaining so much about the feel or the taste of the medicine. Look at the result of the positive result, you know, or what we are. So I'm looking at African Americans today. And again, we still have a long way to go. I was just driving around downtown. I don't get to go downtown. I used to love to go downtown. When I worked corporate America, you know, I'd be downtown all the time. I love the environment. I love the atmosphere. But it was so many years ago. It was maybe 20 years ago. So I've been in another particular, you know, job for the past 18 years, and I can't go downtown as much as I used to. I never go downtown. But today I went downtown to the local community college because I want to take a course this quarter. And I was cruising back, and it was like maybe 10:30 in the morning, and I was just looking at all the people. And I just began to realize the gap. You know, we talk about racial gaps, we talk about, you know, economic gaps and all this gap, but the gap that I'm seeing is growing. And it's mostly African Americans that I saw downtown as I was cruising through there, but it's like it's those that are working and those that are not working. The gap is getting wider and wider. When I was at the community college, you know, this was a Caucasian, but you see a lot of older people there now because of the job situation. This guy was sitting in the career development where they try to help you get jobs, help you, show you how to interview and all. He was about 50 years old, 50-year-old white guy sitting in there. So it's about people who are not working and people who are working now, and that gap is getting so large. And I think the problem is when we find ourselves to the place where we are placated in the place that we are in, and we're believing that this is who we are, and that's all that there is. It's the mindset. It's the worldview or the rationalizing process for that particular moment that we can sit there and rest in almost. That this is just the way that it is. This is who I am. This is the way it's supposed to be. And then we get stuck there. That's why sociologists tell us about these cycles, these generational cycles, where generation after generation stay in a particular way simply because they've learned and they believe this is just the way that it's supposed to be. And I think that's the job of those who are sort of enlightened a little bit more, to begin to try to help folks realize, no, this is not who you are. This is not where you're supposed to be. And that we can be better. And now all this is to say, I was approached by a brother, part of a group. I don't want to say organization, I don't think they're that organized, but he wanted to share with me something that would just knock the African American pastors back on their boots, or ministers. He was saying that he had a book he wanted to show me, that to show that the Song of Solomon, a particular biblical book, was not written by Solomon because it was found, in Africa, or in Egypt 1,000 years prior. And he was like all excited about that, but it was like, duh. For me, I didn't tell him that, but come on now. I mean, there's a history even of Israel in Egypt. Come on, anybody watch Ten Commandments knows that. But it's just regular history. And when you consider the mixing of the blood of all the people over in the Middle East, they all pretty much have mixed blood. And sort of like here, especially if you have a lot of money, you have the ability to put your hands on a lot of artwork, whether it's printed or painted art or printed art, whether it's books or pictures or even words and poetry. So the fact that this wealthy Hebrew got his hands on some Egyptian poetry, if that is the case, it's not that big a deal, because he had the Egyptian blood in the first place. And besides that, he's in a land of and being wealthy and ability to put his hands on things like works of art, poetry, and all. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Song of Solomon was something that he wrote down, but he didn't create himself. It doesn't. Come on, man, that's just history. Come on. And so what I think about that is that sometimes as African Americans I mean it's obvious over the years. I think over the 60s or so, maybe the 50s or 60s and 70s, we became really enlightened to a lot of the historical lies and some of the conspiracies and a lot of the treacheries of people who were involved who were running things. But that's like old news now, okay? We all know this. And so to me, when I'm being told that something that people have embraced, thinking, it came from this individual, but really it came from Egypt or it came from Africa or whatever, I mean, so what? I think I was approached a couple of weeks ago about the bodies on the moon. And if you look that up on the internet, you'll find that some people are conspiracy theorists and believing that there were African American, not African Americans, but African looking folks on the moon. And they found bodies and writings and maybe a ship, or what could have been the remains of a ship. And I'm like, so I did look it up, because I promised that I would. And it's like, first of all, this could be easily made up. And how about this? Let's stretch it. Let's stretch a real far stretch and say, maybe it did happen. Say it did happen. But so what? Man, if you look at when you look at the plight of people in this nation, African Americans and Caucasian Americans, Mexican Americans, people of color, anyone in this nation, we are living lives that have the potential to be totally jacked up. Many people's lives are jacked up. The conspiracy theories, all these enlightenments. I mean, this guy, this whole thing about Solomon and his writing, I'd like to see the date of that book. I bet you it's dated probably 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. This is common knowledge, the history and the people and the wars and the slavery and the mixing of blood. Come on now. We get, what chaff is? They used to have these things where, you'd be in combat, aerial combat, say you have two airplanes or jets, in a dogfight, fighting each other on. And so we seen them like with the Tom Cruise movie and all that. And a missile is shot after one of the jets, one of the planes. They used to have this stuff called chaff, which is like a bunch of garbage. It's a bunch of heated metal and stuff that the aircraft that's being pursued can jettison, can shoot out. And this missile, which is a heat-seeking missile, which is on course trying to get this jet, could sometimes be diverted to go after the chaff. And fortunate for the pilot of the one who was being pursued, he would get away, because the heat-seeking missile, he sensed the heat on that chaff and went after the chaff and blew up the garbage and missed the jet. Okay. when I'm correlating that to us as African Americans today, we get so hung up on these conspiracy theories, on these zeitgeist and conspiracies and Illuminati and Rothschilds and bodies on the moon and the writings from Africa and all this stuff. What in the world is that got to do with the issues that we have today that we're suffering through? To me, all that stuff is like chaff. It's getting us off the... Give me some solutions. Give me some solutions to the issues that we have in our neighborhoods. And that's what we're looking at. My concern isn't about that stuff. I mean, I used to really, look at some of that stuff as well. But okay, so what? Nobody really cares right now. That stuff isn't even that important. What's important is how are we going to satisfy the needs of the people who are homeless? How are we going to satisfy the needs of the people who don't have jobs, who don't have incomes, whose children are following paths that are going to lead them to destruction, whose children, and they're all jacked up. So let's stop chasing after chaff and begin to try to find solutions. As I was driving up, I'm looking at folks, First of all, you look in the faces of people that are just walking around on the street. And they're not happy. You find people who are tremendously upset, tremendously troubled. Then you find people on the street, looking to victimize somebody, but the reality is they're troubled too, and this is all they know. This is their worldview. So the question is, how do we change the worldview? How do we change the rationalizing processes of these people? Forget about these conspiracies. Forget about what happened here, what happened there, and what happened in Africa. We are African Americans because we have a lineage from Africa, but this is where we're at today. We have an African American president. So a lot of the things that we have embraced as the conspiracies are no longer valid, okay? Now, we know, of course, there are people that are in power, there are people in authority, the people that are hiring, the people that are making decisions are still affecting and impacting our lives negatively. But much of what we receive, much of what we get from that is because of our own worldview. Maybe the victim mentality, or maybe the placated mentality that this is okay, or whatever it is. We're not getting well, not because of the man anymore, but because of our worldview. So we need to come together and try to find a way to fix that. That's what we're talking about. See what I'm saying? Because we do have a long way to go. But it is better. Because the worldview of our children, I don't care what neighborhood a child is born in today. I don't care if it's the worst neighborhood, the poorest neighborhood, the most drug-infested, the most terrible neighborhood any child is born in. They know there's an African American president. So that's a piece up than what we had. So the reality of our environment, of our nation, has created this particular positive piece. We as individuals need to be individually creating more and more positive pieces, okay? Trying to change the worldview, trying to change the rationalizing process of our children, or at least molding and guiding them in a particular way that's more healthy for them. I'll tell you, the first thing we need to do is stop getting a buzz in front of them. Stop smoking weed. Stop drinking in front of them. Stop doing destructive things. I was on Facebook the other day, and Facebook friends with Ryan McClin. Not that I have anything to Ryan McClin. A million people are friends with Ryan McClin. But she made this comment yesterday that was just suggesting that everybody try to stop cussing. Stop using bad language. And that was, it's such a plain thing, but I mean, it's start doing something positive, or stop doing something negative, even if it seems minuscule. Stop screaming at your kids. Teach them another way to deal with conflict, to deal with negative situations. We got to do something in our community. We have to come to the point where we stop complaining. We stop blaming it on somebody else. It's their fault. It's the man's fault. It's this fault, or whatever. It's our fault. When we have kids out of wedlock, okay, and then we have conflict based on that. I mean, come on now. We need to figure some stuff out. And get it, because the point of this program, and I've taken a lot of flack from black folks and white folks because they think I shouldn't be saying stuff because white folks might get offended. That's not my concern. But I haven't been out to offend white folks. My point is just to tell African Americans, yes, there may be other folks responsible, for why you are in the place that you're in. Maybe not directly related to you, but in the lineage and in the past, and it sort of came down to where you're at today. So directly or indirectly responsible for your allotted life. And I've just been laying it out. I've just been identifying things that have been true, things that people are saying. I think the Tea Party was perfect, because that struck us a negative way, but kind of rubbed a positive chord in some other folks. And it gave us an opportunity to recognize some of the hidden agendas and motivations that have been festering in a lot of folks that were smiling and acting like they were your friends. And that might be true, but what I'm suggesting is today that you're the one who's going to have to get yourself out of this mess. Now, I don't mind helping, and I think those of us who are in less of a mess should be willing to help others, but come on now. We gotta do something. You gotta take a step. Now, I was in the grocery store today, and I just happened to look at my grocery cart, and I had oranges and spinach and tomatoes and apples and grapes and 100% whole wheat bread and prunes and water and juice. And I was like, 97% of what I had in that thing was like good for you, food that was good for you, health food. And I was thinking that if you had looked at my grocery cart, say 4 years ago, man, you would have seen chips, you would have seen Crisco, you would have seen potatoes for chopping them up and frying them. You would have seen all kinds of food that was terrible. And so I was thinking about, man, I've changed. And so this is all my daughter sees me buying. Okay? Now my son, when he used to shop with me, he saw something else. I'm saying, so we need to evolve in this thing. We need to evolve in this thing. And as we begin to do right and start shopping right and doing right and stop ingesting things into our system that aren't right, stop speaking words that are not right, our kids are going to be seeing this, and their whole worldview is going to be adjusting simply because we're trying to do a better job, okay? So if you can't do it for yourself, do it for the children. How's that? That's all I'm saying. Man, because life is going to be tough enough with it. Especially because of this Obama thing. Because if they get him out of office this time, or even if he does another term and then he's out of office, then there are going to be many people whose worldviews were so traumatically affected, they just got more venomous. They didn't go ahead and flow with it and go with it and recognize that it was a benefit to all of society. There might be some heck to pay. If you haven't prepared your child, I mean, come on, you got to. My child, I always talk about her. I always talk about my children. I got 3. But my daughter is just got her purple belt about a week ago in karate. And I put her picture on Facebook. And I practiced the martial art for many years, and I was being accused often that I just wanted her to do this because I did it, or I was just living vicariously through her. And no, I'm not. I had a great time. I was in tournaments and practiced a lot, enjoyed myself, loved it. My total reason for getting her to the place where she wanted to join the martial art, and for keeping her encouraged, and for driving her there 2 times a week, is for her benefit. I want her to have a confidence. Hopefully she'll have a black belt by the time she's 9. I expect her to have that confidence of having accomplished something that most people never accomplish, and a confidence that she can take care of herself better than she would had she not. And so what I'm trying to do, I have adjusted her worldview in even how she views herself. And that picture I posted on Facebook, that look on her face, is a perfect example of exactly what has motivated me to do this. The confident, the proud look she has on her face. And then I put another picture of this kick that she was doing, which was a matter of fact. She wasn't even changing facial expression. She was just doing it. And so I have been able to motivate, to mold her worldview, to adjust more positively the way she sees herself. These are the type of things we need to be doing. And that's what I'm suggesting. Well, I think I filled your ear enough, give you some things to think about, I hope. And one thing I do want to thank you for joining me again and listening. And I want to invite you to listen again. You take care.